Hey everybody, welcome back to Season 3 of Unsolicited Feedback. I am Brian Belfour, founder and CEO of Reforge, and one of your co-hosts. It took us a while to get going, but we are here, and we have an incredible first episode to kick off this season. In this episode, I'm joined by my co-host, Fareed Masavat, and our good friend, Casey Winters, who's the former Chief Product Officer at Eventbrite and advisor to Faire, Whatnot, Reddit, Canva, Airbnb, just an incredible list of companies. He's currently founding a new company called SuperMe. But in this episode, we talk about a really critical topic that is going on right now called product market fit collapse. This thing that is happening to companies where their customer expectations increase in a very short period of time, and this product market fit that they felt like was strong completely collapses beneath them, and it enters the company into a tailspin. In this episode, we talk about why this is happening, why we think we're actually going to see more of it, and we talk a little bit about how you might start to think about it strategically and prevent it. But my biggest takeaway from this episode is just how strategically intense the current environment is and how different it is from previous technology shifts over the past 20 years. And that's why Reforge has really dedicated themselves to helping product teams shift into AI native product teams, how we think, work, and build differently with AI. And on that front, we have a couple things to help you with the topic that we talk about in this episode. First and foremost, check out the product strategy program created by Casey and Fareed, which has been one of the most impactful evergreen programs for me personally, but a lot of our members. And two, our upcoming new course, AI Strategy, which we are creating with the former Chief Product Officer at Tinder, Ravi Mehta, as well as a couple heavy hitters from the AI industry that we will announce soon. In addition to that, we have started to release tools and products to help product teams become AI native. Our first called Reforge Insight Analytics, where we help you aggregate all of the chaotic qualitative data that you are collecting about your customers, whether that's from your sales system, success, support, marketing, your in-product research, your user research teams, or what all your customers are saying about you online in your public communities into one place. We ingest it in a smart way. We use AI to help you analyze it, connect it with your quantitative data, and then we help feed that information into the tools that your product team is already using, whether that's something like Jira, Linear, Notion, Google Docs, so that it's at the fingertips of all of the builders in your team as they are building. Check it out at reforge.com/insight-analytics. Click that Get a Demo button. You can mention my name in the form. I'm happy to sit down and give you a personalized demo myself. But other than that, we hope you enjoy the episode. I figured what better topic to start a new season off than talking about companies collapsing. Very positive topic, right? No. All right. So maybe we kick this off. Let me give a few minute overview for the audience that's listening on what this topic is. And then I'd love Fareed and Casey to chime in because I've furiously responding to comments on LinkedIn about this since I posted it. There's this concept I've been thinking about called product market fit collapse, right? And I've been thinking about it through the framework that you two created for the product strategy course, which is the product market fit treadmill. And the product market fit treadmill is if you visualize it, there is a line of company performance. And as companies are going through that journey to figure out product market fit, it starts flat and then it starts to increase the more product market fit they get. But there's also this line that you all named the PMF threshold. And that's kind of where the customer expectations are for a given problem in a given use case. The product has to get past that line in order to hit product market fit. You could keep building and adding things, but at some point it becomes like overkill, which is kind of the top part of the graph. But the key thing about this graph is actually just that customer expectations don't stay static. It's not a flat line. They actually increase over time because new competitors come in, other things, other kind of innovations. And as a result, you actually have to evolve. You have to keep up over time. Otherwise, you risk falling out of product market fit. And of course, in most normal environments, that increase is steady. It's more linear. But in times of technology innovations and technology shifts, the shape of that curve, the customer expectations can change. And the point that I tried to argue was that in previous technology shifts, yes, customer expectations would accelerate, but they accelerate on such a timeline that it actually gives, products with strong product market fit a lot of time to adapt. And of course, some products don't, right? They just ignore it or don't execute well, and they have fallen out of product market fit. But a whole set of strategies to diversify your portfolio, take bets, kind of plan ahead, like all of these types of things. But something that we're seeing a little bit different with AI is rather than that curve, customer expectations accelerating a little bit, we're almost kind of seeing that curve like spike up, almost like go exponential. And as a result, products fall out of product market fit really quickly, and that's kind of the collapse. Yeah. So a couple quick examples. The one that's been going around a lot is Chegg. In 9 months since the launch of ChatGPT, their market value declined 90%. They lost 500,000 subscribers. And it's very clear that they're in this tailspin because their core growth loop and value prop of I get more subscribers, which funds more human-created answers from a curated set of humans around homework help to help me get more customers, right, is pretty much broken. They're churning subscribers left and right because those users can get personalized instant answers, be able to interact with them, all those things via ChatGPT or Claude or one of these other tools for the same price or free. And as a result, that value prop in that growth model is broken. The other one is Stack Overflow. This one's been debated hotly online about how much they're declining, but there was a good post done on this blog called Observable HQ, which actually took data from that Stack Overflow was publishing for a while and showed that the amount of their posts, not only their posts, but the votes in the interaction, the kind of key mechanisms that are driving their core growth model instantly started to decline as well with the launch of Copilot and other things. So they're in a tailspin. And the last is Shutterstock at Getty, which I feel like is one that's in progress right now. They made a defensive move to merge, and that data isn't public, but it's very clear why they're merging, which is their value prop and the customer expectations around their value prop are spiking as well as things like Midjourney and other things become really good at helping you generate images versus getting this really generic stock photography. Biggest common question I've gotten so far is this just market disruption? And I'm like, kind of yes, but if we just say it's market disruption, that leads us to believe that the patterns and strategies that we've learned from previous technology shifts are the ones that will work in this one. And I think the argument that I'm trying to make is that I really don't believe that's true. And as a result, we have to ask ourselves like a different set of questions, take a different set of actions. I don't know what all those actions are. I'm figuring them out myself in the founder seat. But this is kind of the concept and everything. So I'll pause there and would love to hear from one of you on this.
Yeah. And, it's interesting because when we built the idea of the product market fit treadmill, we sort of drew it as this slow and steady line of customer expectations growing. And I just want to quickly point out that that's true even absent competition or market changes, right? And that's because as customers use your product, they actually have more expectations and use cases that emerge that they maybe didn't know when they signed up. It was kind of designed to be an answer to why should I build features that don't directly drive monetization, retention, or acquisition for my product, right? Companies spend a lot of their time building new features, and most of those don't drive direct, obvious, measurable business results. And the reason is because your product market fit has this slow expansion that it has to have as people, just by the nature of the active usage in the product, right? Simple example would be like, as more people use Facebook comments, there were a lot of comments that were like, great post. So they added the like button. I don't know if that's the actual story, but there are ways in which you're converting user behavior or high friction user behavior into low friction user behavior to make your product more simple. I think the question, so one, obviously there's an acceleration that can come from like competition or external market forces. I think the question I have is it just the same as, say, the mobile shift, but faster? Or is there something fundamental about the AI shift that fundamentally changes the way a company needs to respond? That isn't just go quicker or start earlier, right? Famously, Facebook pivoted to mobile, spent a lot of time and effort doing that, and had to react relatively quickly, but had time, right? Like they went public and then spent a bunch of time working.
And they were dismissive of mobile apps for the first generation and still obviously ended up being fine.
And still were fine. Is it that, but faster, or is there something fundamentally different is the question that I have. And I'm curious, Brian, why you felt like this is different as a collapse, or Casey.
Yeah, I can chime in there. So one of the inspirations for the product market fit treadmill when we created it was this shareholder letter from Jeff Bezos, in which he said that like one thing he loved about customers is that they're divinely discontent. Their expectations are never static. They go up, and that's human nature. And we have a voracious appetite for a better way. And yesterday's wow becomes today's ordinary. But to talk about kind of how you in normal times like evaluate this, it's like, well, why would you ever improve the design of your product? Well, it's because the entire internet is getting better from a UX perspective like every minute. So even if there isn't competition shifts, you're going to fall behind, expectations. And if you do a redesign, you're not necessarily going to see, or improvements in design over time, you're not going to see like a lift in the metrics like Fareed was talking about. But if you don't do it, 5 years from now, all your metrics will be like dramatically worse. And that can be like a smart way to justify these investments. One way I think about mobile being different is I think with AI versus mobile, the fundamental things that you could do that you couldn't do before are just a bit more surprising and unpredictable in the AI shift versus the mobile shift. Look, we could argue it was a little bit surprising how much having Google Maps on the phone disrupted the taxi industry. Like we could make a little bit of an argument there, but like it wasn't really shocking, like I think to most people, and that was an incredibly low NPS industry before. And I think I don't think Chegg and Stack Overflow were low NPS before these AI tools came out, right? I think they're decently loved products. So I think that's kind of another thing that's a little bit different here. And I think even today, one of the challenges in trying to build a new company, like myself, or grow an established company like Brian, or figure out, which companies to join, the error rate on even smart people's predictions on who's going to have sustainable growth over the next 10 years is just insanely high. You could do nothing wrong and, you just get sideswiped out of the game so quickly. Now, I don't think that's an excuse to throw your hands up. I think we need to try to predict as smartly as we can. But I was been listening to a bunch of these AI podcasts from the researchers, and like the amount of times they get surprised on something that happened, and the amount of time someone else on the podcast says something and then the other researchers like, oh, really? They don't even know that. And they're surprised by that being true. No one's able to read all the papers. There's just too many things going on. And that feels incredibly different from the mobile era, which we all lived through, and incredibly different from the internet era, which was, the last wave of disruption before that. I think what's also different about AI, which isn't necessarily like a saving grace, is the incumbents are so on top of it compared to any previous technology shift. And that doesn't necessarily save them from being disrupted and having their product market fit collapse. But what it does mean is the attention to a problem and how it can be redefined with AI is basically hitting from all angles.
Right.
The incumbents are trying a bunch of stuff. There's new startups trying a bunch of stuff. There's later stage startups that are maybe trying to rethink their product market fit entirely. Everyone's kind of doing this at the same time. So there's almost like a perfect equilibrium of experiments being run. And that doesn't feel familiar to me from living through internet and mobile either. Right. Which just makes this like way harder to evaluate inside your own company in terms of building something new. But again, like you have to get to work to find some solution to this, or there will be many more Cheggs, many more Stack Overflows on the way.
Yeah. Which kind of gets to which I wanted to point out, with both of your points, the speed and the emergent nature of this, right? Why I think we're going to see more of this is that this is like the curve of just OpenAI's progress on benchmarks, right? And it goes from GPT-2 to GPT-3, 4, 4.0, 0.1, and then, of course, the one that they're about to release, 0.3. And what you can see is like literally just in the past 4 months from 1 to 0.3, it's very clear that the curve of capabilities is inflecting. But the problem is, and the challenges, and this is kind of the weird part of the time right now, is like, where are most of the products? Where are we most? We're actually still earlier on this curve. Most of the things that we know right now are things that we know about, from us building with GPT-3 and GPT-4. And so as more time we have to like build on these things, not only are the capabilities way farther up the exponential curve, but we also, the range of emergent possibilities is much wider as well. And so as a result, Casey, I think you said the term sideswiped. That's what I feel like it's going to feel like.
Well, okay. So what I will say in response to that is like what gets measured gets managed. And as all of these LLM companies start to get evaluated on the same scale, they get better at teaching towards the test. So I don't know that I trust the exponential curve of these graphs generically in all cases.
Sure.
And where they were growing in terms of just capability of like the LLM with Moore's law, right? There was like a emergent trend that essentially became a mandate inside companies to find a way to get to it. And they would sort of find these hacks to preserve that that level of progress in different ways. And I think you're seeing that with a lot of the models in that like on the baseline level of learning, they're starting to cap out, but they have this other thing that they can do that gets them growth or this other thing. Yeah. And I do think you run out of these stones to unturned. I can't tell where the graph's going to go. Is it going to asymptote? Is it going to go vertical? And there are like incredibly smart researchers that have points that disagree on all of this. So that part is tricky too. So like, I don't know where I sit. I know I don't believe this vertical graph that OpenAI proposes.
But
and
regardless,
people don't either.
Regardless though, I think it's not just the learning curve, like the foundational models that are accelerating. I think the reason this collapse era feels so different, and I'm just coming up with this, so poke holes in it if you hear it, is one, we see the capability of the models increasing, just the raw models themselves increasing. Whether you believe the metrics or not, it seems like obvious that newer models are better at solving problems than older ones. Like I'm using it for more things and it's doing them better, meaning I have to put less effort in to get good output. So I'll call that the learning curve or whatever, the model capability curve. The second is the product surface area of companies like Google with Gemini, OpenAI with ChatGPT and others, as well as Claude, et cetera, is expanding. I mean, just last week they launched this week they launched Operator, which allows you to control your computer, which Claude and other teams have done, et cetera. And so the product surface area, so the number of problems you can solve easily and the friction to do them is growing really, really fast. Like the speed at which these companies are releasing new products is reasonably unprecedented. But I think the third one that's the most different is how quick consumer adoption has been of particularly ChatGPT, but AI tools in general, the foundational tools, which is way different than previous curves. Like the iPhone, it's a thing that costs money that you have to buy, right?
It took time for that. It took time. And the speed and the mobile speed of the internet to enable those use cases. Exactly. That was the other thing that took time in that shift.
So there was this artificial slowdown, even though smartphones are the fastest adopted new consumer technology of all time. The speed at which ChatGPT and other tools have gotten to $1 billion in revenue, 1 billion users, whatever the numbers are, is also unprecedented. And I think when you layer all of those together, which is like the product's getting better, it can do more things, and everybody's using it at once, that's when you see things like Chegg happen, which is like Chegg maybe or a similar company would have 3-4 years just because it takes time for people to buy iPhones, especially in late adopters. Chegg's in a unique situation where like their users are students and students are happy to try free stuff that's easy to use. And so it's just like, boom. So I think there's something to this that's different because, and to add to Casey's point, incumbents, startups, and foundational model companies are all doing this at the same time. So it's sort of like, it's coming from all directions.
Which also
like
means
the amount of competition is so high too.
The infrastructure capabilities that are coming out on a week-to-week basis to make developing this easier is crazy. So like we're building an AI product right now, and it's almost like every week we learn about something new that's going to make something we're working on tremendously easier. So you get this wave of infrastructure support that's completely separate from what the LLMs are capable of from a learning perspective to just make what you're trying to do allow you to get way faster to market, to be way more reliable, et cetera. And that's really exciting, but it's also hard to predict. So if you go too far down an infrastructure rabbit hole, like you're probably going to be pretty outdated on the stack you should be having and building this stuff like in 6 months. And there will be a dozen new startups that have come up and a dozen new incumbent, copycats, whatever you want to call them. So it's just, it's mind boggling.
Yeah. So I think my answer to is this disruption is yes, but like, from more angles. Because like the classical disruption is new upstarts do something cheaper or lower end that's less capable, but less expensive, are able to start in the bottom of the market and eventually blindside a company who thinks that market doesn't matter, that eventually gets disrupted. But this isn't exactly that. what's happening is the disruption is happening from the top end. This is a more capable product than the one that we have, right? It's not just cheaper. It's happening on pricing, which is also happening. And it's happening from not just startups, but other large companies at the same time.
Enterprise adoption is crazy high
Yeah.
on AI tooling.
Exactly. And so I think you could call it that, but it's more extreme. And I think it would be a misnomer to take a casual version of the word disruption and apply it when I think there was a very specific idea.
Yeah, if
when
you follow
talking
the
about
Christensen
classical
playbook
disruption.
on this, you're not going to survive.
Right.
I think that is why it feels different. Look, it rhymes. It's related, but the steps of how it happens is differently, and the steps on what to do to survive it and thrive in it are going to feel very different as well.
Yeah. So I think that begs the next question, which is, how do you avoid this? And once again, this isn't just a question with products that they're a little bit old. They have product market fit, but the customers kind of hate them. This is for products that are relatively loved as well, right? Stack Overflow checks are
Yep.
so this is a
Or
question.
brand new
But
startups that
that's
end
the
up
crazy
completely
thing. Yes.
disrupted
Yes.
just by OpenAI releasing a new feature a week
I
later.
know.
Like
I know.
you see this. I mean, we can make some predictions about other places we're going to see this happening, but you saw a whole bunch of AI writing tools. Those have all been pulled into like Google Docs now.
I think this is which gets to some of what Brian's talking about. When the first commercial use case of, I think it was GPT-3 came out, from what I understand, it was Jasper, which was that writing tool. And they shot up to well over 100 million in revenue, like fairly quickly. And I think most people in market, though certainly some VCs disagreed, of like, well, everyone's going to have this in 6 months, right? So this isn't sustainable. That company needs to sequence to something else in order to be like a long-term venture scale business. Or, of course, an alternative model that's emerged with AI companies is don't raise venture, pocket insane amount of profit. And if you don't have a sustainable advantage long-term and all your founders walk away, with $80 million in their pocket after 5 years, like, okay, cool. And that's basically the Midjourney model, right? And what's interesting about Midjourney is they seem to have still maintained a lead in that. But I think there's just a lot of cases where that particular version gets good enough for most users, and then having a lead like no longer matters. And we could talk about this with actually current AI companies if that's interesting and what they should do. But there's some predictability in what's going to be ubiquitous and when, and what things that incumbents are going to adopt and when. And I think part of my mental model around it is the things that are easy for incumbents to adopt will happen relatively quickly. They have smart teams, they're paying attention. The things that take longer are when, for the incumbent to adopt the thing, it very, very much disrupts their business model. So on the sales side, right, where everyone's charging per seat pricing for the number of sales reps you have, there was a little bit more time for startups to come up and say, oh, you don't need to hire salespeople anymore. Like, I could do this with AI. And that's really hard for like Salesforce, Gong, et cetera, to respond to super quickly when your entire profit pool comes from how many salespeople are buying the product. And look, Gong and Salesforce could end up being fine. I mean, Salesforce is out in the market with Agentforce. They're going for it. We'll see what happens. That tends to give you a little bit more time of like, oh, AI creates a fundamental business model disruption for the incumbent versus just like, a thing I can add to my suite. Like Google Docs adding better writing stuff is like very easy for them to add into their suite. And like maybe Google Docs doesn't have the smartest or most interesting PMs working on it, so they're a little slow, whatever. But like, it's going to happen. I'm not saying that is the case. I'm just saying you could say that to yourself as a startup, right?
Yes,
I don't know anything about the Google Docs team.
Yeah.
But I mean, this was even true before AI, right? Like Airtable came up with like a spreadsheet that had like fields in it that you could click and choose. And it took like Microsoft and Google like 7 years to copy. It was like a pretty obvious thing. I think with AI, the incumbents are copying faster. But if copying it faster throws away $1 billion of net profit, like that's going to take some time to figure out how to do it, which is arguably why OpenAI even exists, because all this stuff was invented at Google, but it was going to wipe away $100 billion worth of profit on AdWords. So, Google kind of kept it on the shelf until startups forced them to take Gemini to market properly. And now they're going to figure it out, and we'll see what happens.
So as an example of what to do about it, an example that's been on my mind recently has been Grammarly and Coda recently merged, or an acquisition.
That was a surprising
I don't know.
one.
And it was
I did
a
not see that
surprising
one coming.
one. But let's look at it from the context of your Grammarly and you want to, let's assume they thought we want to avoid PMF collapse. I'm not sure that's the actual framework, but why would Coda be an important piece of your puzzle? And I think the short answer is being attached to other products as an extension, which is what Grammarly does, right? And is their normal use case, is a very dangerous place to be when everyone is implementing your functionality directly into their end products. Notion is doing it. Google Docs is doing it. All the surface areas where it's used. And in a lot of ways, it looks like Stack Overflow, because Stack Overflow isn't a home that people hang out in, most of the users. They go to Google, they copy an error message, they go to Stack Overflow, they use the thing. So it's really easy to get disintermediated or moved out or to stop the habit. And so I think the Coda thing is important because we need to make our product a home and the actual source of creation versus a set of functionality that is tacked on to other products. Does that resonate?
Well,
Does that seem like it's necessary?
I agree with that in theory, but I don't think that's actually what has happened in some of the recent examples, because you called out one with Coda joining Grammarly, but also this happened with Snowflake recently, where they acquired a company, and then they make that company was Neeva, one of the early LLM kind of application companies, founded by one of the very senior leads of engineering at Google. And Snowflake acquires that company. I don't know, 6-9 months later, they make Sridhar, the founder of that company, the CEO. And then with Grammarly, what's happening is they're acquiring Coda. You can call it a merger or whatever you want to call it. And, the founder of Grammarly, after, 15 years, is stepping aside, and Sridhar is going to run the combined company.
Right.
I don't know that Coda's document maker is super strategic to the future of Grammarly. I think the thing that matters is we are bringing in an AI native CEO that's going to chart the course for the future of both of these companies, right? Snowflake, in their instance, Databricks, extremely valuable competitor that feels like a more AI native solution, right? So Snowflake goes and gets one of the smartest people in AI to run their company, and we're going to see what happens there.
So what do you do about it?
Well, I mean, maybe talking a little bit more generically, right? Like drawing from the other core framework of that product strategy program, which is just the different types of product work, from feature growth, scaling, PMF expansion, and figuring out like how you should place your portfolio of bets. How might your portfolio bets look different in this scenario than what the portfolio bets might have looked like if you were trying to transition through the mobile era?
When you covered kind of the examples in the blog post of what Chegg did the first time they got disrupted with digital, and what Netflix did is they almost irrationally bet the company on the future. And what that means from product strategy framework perspective is product market fit expansion almost means product market fit disruption. In this case, like you have to disrupt yourself before the market does. And normally when we teach this course, we're teaching about it's something to add on top of your product market fit to enable new TAM, to be able to grow faster, to be able to be more profitable. And this might be it completely eats the core product, and that core product's expected to go away because the market will disrupt it. You disrupt it first because you understand what the components of that product market fit are better than anyone anyway, because you built it. And that needs to shift to be like a wildly high percentage of your investment generally, from a product and engineering perspective, and then kind of when it's ready from like your go-to-market resources. So I think that is the main difference. Like we essentially prior to this never would teach you to do this, right?
Yeah.
Like we would
exactly
never teach you to you have something that's got product market fit, bet the company on something different because you think it's cool. Like that would be generally a terrible idea. But in a lot of these industries, that's kind of the only play moving forward, I think.
Yeah.
Now, diagnosing whether you are in one of those industries is something we could talk about, but that has to be the move. And I think we're fortunate to have some companies in the past that have shown that isn't an immediate death sentence like Netflix. But there aren't a lot of examples of people doing that successfully historically.
And I think it's still important. I don't think you're recommending do a hard pivot, right? We talk about how new product is a rare choice for most companies. It's not Amazon can do it, Facebook can do it, etc. But it's not usually a good choice. It's sort of a choice of last resort when you're really good at everything else.
It's a choice of massive scale
right.
when you've done the other options, which are usually a lot easier, or you've built up such amazing technical know-how that
Right.
it kind of just unlocks this seemingly separate
Right.
market, which is, the AWS example.
So I think the important thing, the core questions we ask about product market fit expansion are still important to ask. The primary one being, why are we uniquely in a position to do this better than other people? Which is, I think, an important question to ask generally for product market fit expansion, but is in an era when a lot of people are just tacking AI stuff on that looks a little tangential, I think an important thing, and what is the version of it that works? So one, you can stretch your distribution. So like if you have a lot of great distribution, then that's a benefit. Maybe you have more options than a company without a ton of distribution. You have some technical know-how. Unfortunately, most companies outside of the ones we've already talked about don't actually have strong technical know-how in this space, right? So they have to develop it. So that's not one of the reasons. Grammarly's really good at AI stuff. They probably can do great AI stuff in the future.
I think it is understated that they've had AI capabilities for years before LMs were cool. So that is a different thing.
Exactly. The next is, so we talked about technology, we talked about distribution. And I think it is like lock-in, retention, system of record type things. Like, okay, we have a user base, and so we have an easy way to transition them to other use cases. I think that these are the types of questions you have to ask when you think about what should we do to prevent disruption. Because the fact is, if the answer is like, do something totally new and different, that is not an core capability, you will probably be beaten there by someone who is, or alternatively, you should start a new company, do a spin out or something like that.
Okay, what's your thought on this, Fareed, right? Like when you think about a merger and acquisition strategy, right? You're thinking about, am I acquiring scale, am I acquiring scope, or am I acquiring capabilities, right? And you just argued that Grammarly was acquiring scope, the ability to actually own the document. And I argued, no, actually, I think they're getting capabilities. They're getting Shashir, who's probably would be top of the line for a lot of people to acquire as like an AI native CEO,
Absolutely.
Right? He used to run product for YouTube before. Like he's a heavy hitter, right? But also this AI stuff isn't that old. So like if we're inside one of these companies, are we just trying to learn it? Are we trying to go hire people that have been in the research programs of a lot of these top LM companies? Or are we desperately go getting our Sridhar at Snowflake, our Shashir from Coda, the people that are AI natives, because we could sell them on a distribution advantage we have, and they could sell us on being AI native and, fast tracking us 9, 12, 18 extra months on what the AI native solution for this market should be. Like, I don't know what the answer is, but I mean, you're clearly seeing some teams are just learning stuff and launching things. Some teams are saying, I need to go acquire someone. And some companies like Google are like, I need to go acquire the people that left because now this is the thing. Right.
Oh, I can see how these three things fit together as a suite. So maybe our AI strategy can layer on all of them instead of just one at a time and by pulling them all together. So like, this is why we'll see that maybe Miro will do something like that, like collecting some adjacent pieces. Notion's in a good position because they have a central use.
But they have done a few of that, right? They acquired a calendar company.
Yep, that's right. They're going into calendar. It's like, hey, let's get wide so that we look like more of a general purpose AI solution, because I think the problem is like adding the chatbot to every point tool is not going to be the long term of it. So you actually have to collect use cases. So maybe that's one acquisition type strategy that is valuable. Another is the talent one for sure. I think the researchery one is tough for most people. My suggestion there would be get really good at shipping, like get really good at prototyping, shipping, and building fast, because you're probably not going to compete on the like super high-end research side. I don't know, Brian, your thoughts? You just did. You just did an acquisition, like I know
a guy who's making acquisitions. Yeah, we did, and it was both for use case and talent. It was a combo of both, and I think we got very fortunate. I mean, I looked for a long time and found an amazing team in Monterey, as well as an amazing product in a category we wanted to take a bet on, and so stars freaking aligned, and that thing's like off to the races. So yeah, for those listening, if you want to check out the new product, it's called Reforge Insight Analytics. But the piece that I'm sitting here thinking about, kind of where we started this question was, to your point, it's like moving beyond PMF expansion and back around to like pure 0 to 1 product market fit to disrupt yourself. And it's just, I just want to acknowledge how hard that is for a company with an existing product to do, because there's two elements, right? One, have to wipe the slate clean in your brain to think about it from a different angle. And two is like, you've got to be taking bets far enough up that exponential AI capability curve, because I think the tendency is always just to be too incremental. Any company that's been around for 5 years or more has a whole list of wishes of, if I was to start this company again today, here is all the different things that the way I would build it differently. But those tend to be, that might lead to maybe like a slightly better user experience, or that doesn't lead you to new 0 to 1, PMF use in your category.
Right? So if you found product market fit, you generally didn't hire that many people before it. And all the people you hired were to scale that product market fit. Yeah. And now you're like, wait a minute, I need to redefine my product market fit because it's going to go away. That's not the job they signed up for. That's generally not the skills they're good at. It's other founders who have done 0 to 1 stuff that are better to bring in for that, which explains maybe some of this M&A curve we've been seeing lately. And look, it's not that people inside your company can't switch brains, but their likelihood of having done it before or having kind of an immediate feel for it is usually pretty low, right? Which means a lot of this redefinition has to be founder-led by the original co-founders of the company, or, bringing in fresh kind of founder-like blood, which obviously you've done, Brian, a bunch of other people have. And, there's pros and cons to that strategy too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, an interesting side takeaway on this is also there are sort of 3 kinds of acquisitions. There's team acquisitions, there's product capability acquisitions, and then there's like business acquisitions, right? And we haven't seen a lot of the second one for quite a while. Like a lot of I bought this product, I'm not buying the revenue, I'm buying this product and the capabilities.
Adobe tried.
And it just seems like that's gotta grow in a world where a ton of people are trying to phase off product market fit collapse.
Much more acquisitive environment.
Well, I think also some of that
kind of acquisition. It's not just we're going to acquire your team, shut down your product, which was like the most common way startups got acquired. Shut down your product and then start over. It's rather like we are making this real and a part of what we do.
I think you'll see a lot of this, over time.
Yeah. Okay. I think we should. With our few minutes left, I want to extend this conversation to the second part of this that I've been thinking about, which is not just product market fit collapse, but what if we see product channel fit collapse? And I'll explain what that means in a second. So there was this post that went viral pretty quickly by Ryan Law, who it works at a SEO tool company called, I don't even know how do you pronounce it?
I call it Ahrefs, but I have no idea how you actually say it.
That's for me too.
Ahrefs.
Anyway, Ahrefs.
Ahrefs.
Yeah. The graph basically showed HubSpot's organic traffic going from basically decreasing 75% from December 2023 until January 2025. So basically in a year. And for those that don't know, the core of HubSpot's growth model is essentially this organic, company-generated organic SEO loop. And so a lot of people started really chiming in, and they were like, oh my God, it's AI, and like all like other stuff. To be very, very clear, one is that this data be buggy, right? Like this data is not coming from internal metrics at
not
the
coming
company,
from HubSpot
right?
or Google.
But this has been basically confirmed by HubSpot, right?
Yeah. So HubSpot basically confirmed that some of this is true, not the accuracy of like the relative change, but yes, that they have seen a decrease in results. 2 is that there's no way this is due all to like AI and people shifting to Perplexity and stuff. Otherwise, we would see this pattern across a bunch of companies. Though Kieran and HubSpot have like publicly confirmed that is a contributing factor to it, right? Yep. Among other factors like Google changing their algorithm, HubSpot proactively making some changes to their strategy and how they do things. Apparently, they're going to do a podcast on it, on Marketing Against the Grain, which is an excellent podcast, by the way. So I'm looking forward to that episode. But it was just another light push in my head towards, okay, like what if? What if a major channel that a bunch of other companies have essentially molded their product around, like Google, experiences product market fit collapse, meaning they experience this decline in a very short period of time, which then has this ripple effect on a whole ecosystem of other companies. Mm-hmm. And It's fascinating to me because it's not like you can just, a lot of these products like TripAdvisor and stuff, you can't just like add another channel. These products have 15 years of history of being built and optimized for this specific motion. That is not something you can change. And so it's just another one of these examples of what happens when these disruptions happen in a very short period of time.
I'm an SEO geek, so I could talk about this for a while.
I should have just called out Casey on this.
Fareed, do you want to start before I put my glasses even closer to my face?
I think you're probably going to say this, but I would just say that Google has been in the business of sucking search queries into their ecosystem for a decade plus. I mean, the CEO of Yelp would yell to anyone who would listen about this over a decade ago. AI definitely makes it easy for them to do that without a lot of product investment across a wide variety of search terms that they weren't able to do this for before. So I think that that's a reality, and we're going to start to see that accelerate. And I think it means they will change their algorithm appropriately. Meaning, if it's easily answered by an LLM and it has nothing to do with your product, we're not going to rank your page for it anyway. So I think this is inevitable. I think the more interesting question you asked that I think maybe we've tabled, because I think Casey probably has some specific SEO questions, is what if the platform I'm built on has product market fit collapse? Or for instance, like if TikTok goes offline, think about all the businesses that are in deep trouble because they have built their business, not just content creators, but e-commerce, et cetera, on top of TikTok, right? And that's a regulatory one. But if you're a platform company that other people sell on, like this is a real risk. And I think that that's an interesting one to ask is like, who are my supporting platforms that have PMF collapse that could happen by no fault of my own, even if AI has nothing to do with me? So that's where my head went with that. Casey?
I agree. This is definitely an under-discussed second-order effect question of this technology shift that, there are some investments I've not made because of these concerns where I wouldn't have thought about this in, 2015 or even like 2017. Mm-hmm. So I will say Google has been the most stable platform to grow on for 20 years, compared to how unsteady Facebook has been, et cetera. Like it's been the most stable. And it's almost more market forces are making them become more unstable, but also the fact that we gamified its stability a little bit too much. So I think what you see in HubSpot from the data I've been able to see, and I look forward to hearing the podcast from them on it, is for a lot of marketplace and SaaS queries, there's all these high intent queries that you go crush that drive direct signups and activations. And then it became very
I want a CRM for my dentist. And it's like, that's the ones that matter the most.
And HubSpot's probably pretty good at that. And then once you get pretty good at that, it became very in vogue for a lot of companies, especially when like SEO is owned more by the marketing team versus say like product and engineering, to go for these, higher in the funnel, lower intent, but incredibly high volume queries. Yes. And I'm going to leverage my domain authority to rank high for all those too. There's going to be a ton more search volume, a much lower conversion rate, but I'm building awareness and consideration, right? And all those like classic marketing concepts. I've never been a big fan of that. I know it worked, but it was a lot of effort. There's low trackable, ability of what actually is driving downstream. I've always preferred the model of, hey, I ranked number one for the direct intent query. Let me rank number two as well. Let me go build another website that will rank number two, or let me go buy the number two and let me dominate. That's more the Expedia model, and certainly what we
get. And just to show some data, all of the top queries that they are no longer ranked for, things like resignation letter template.
It is very far from their core.
Famous quotes from interesting people, like things like that. It's like stuff that's not about the product, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I wrote about this on my blog a long time ago. So I've been, a fan of this more direct transactional approach for a while. But what you are seeing is across all marketplaces and all SaaS companies that I've talked to about this, even before hearing the HubSpot news, is they are getting aggressively punished for overreaching on their topical authority for higher volume queries, aggressively so. The challenge is, if you're on one of those teams, is like even for the transactional stuff, Google's own products are getting increasingly competitive with them. So if you're in travel, Google's got its own travel offering. If you're in local, you mentioned the Yelp example, Google Local's a pretty good product now. If you're in shopping, Google Shopping is a dramatically different user experience than it even was a couple of years ago. As such, companies feel like they're getting attacked at the top end for abusing their authority. They're getting attacked at the low end by Google becoming a more viable and perhaps unfair competitor. It's not easy for me to find a company whose Google traffic is up year over year. And I would argue that is not due to ChatGPT. That is certainly not due to Perplexity. That is because Google's either eating that traffic for itself with increasingly competitive products, or more radically distributing who gets the traffic for these upper funnel queries, or Gemini just answering it, right?
And just keyword competition around the paid products. Which you've seen the number of ad placements go up.
I guess
ad placements go up.
Google doesn't have to experience product market fit collapse for this to happen. If
Correct.
they get to a defensive enough stance, right, to protect themselves and disrupt themselves, which you're seeing, right, like more and more of their results getting eaten by the AI generated results. And yeah, like the same effect can happen.
Well, yeah. So I mean, and a way to think about this, and probably why Kieran wasn't as concerned in his public LinkedIn post as maybe we would have expected, is that this already started happening well before the AI wave, right? If you had stuff that was more factual, Google started using this product called Answer Box to just answer the question. And they're not doing that because they hate your business and they want you to fail. They're doing that because that's what the user wants. They don't want to click on a link when there's a more immediate way to get the response, right? So they're just responding to what users actually want. So if you can think of, Answer Box already doomed a lot of these queries for companies. All Gemini is doing is stomping on the grave, right? But like you already knew this wasn't a long-term thing before this AI wave. So like if you didn't do anything about it, this is an area where you had a much longer time period to know that your product channel fit was changing. If you were getting a lot of these more informational query traffic. So like you have not been paying attention, or to your point, like there's just nothing else you could do. I can't reinvest it into paid. I can't reinvest it into social content, right? I don't have the AOVs to be doing sales. And I think what we discussed a long time ago on the podcast was how aggressively HubSpot's moved into new products to launch to open up potentially, new growth loops for them. And maybe some of this they saw around the corner, and that's why they're doing it. But like almost 80% of this problem has nothing to do with AI. Like this is algorithm updates that have been going on for a very long period of time. Google's been very clear in the blog, like waving the signal, like, hey guys, we're getting more micro in how we think about authority. We're gonna get better at this. We're gonna, spread things around. And if it's immediately answerable, we're gonna answer it because that's what users want. And that all was already in path well before AI. Yes, Gemini probably accelerates it a little bit. Yes, maybe ChatGPT stealing share accelerates some of it a little bit, but like it didn't seem like the main thing of what's going on here.
Yeah. I mean, my takeaway from all of this conversation, if I could like sum it up, is a lot of stuff feels like quicksand right now. Things that look like solid things you can count on look like quicksand. We talked about product market fit, even for very stable long-term products, just collapsing. We've got channels becoming less stable and less predictable. We didn't even talk about business model changes like seat to outcome, but business models being unstable, and also like selling employee seats used to be stable because most companies were growing and now they're not. So like there are a lot of aspects of building a company, even at late stages, that makes them significantly less stable and more uncertain. And I think many will emerge even more successful, but it is an interesting time. I mean, that's my main takeaway from this conversation right now.
I joked in the comments on the LinkedIn post, but when people ask me how I'm doing these days, my response is I'm constantly oscillating between extreme excitement and existential crisis. And
plus one.
That is
one.
not purely a joke. There is some actual truth to that.
My variation of this as like a pre-product market fit founder is, depending on the day, I am either utterly confused or probably wrong, but not confused. I'm currently in a probably wrong, but not confused state, which is why I feel good today. But yeah, like it's really tricky. And this creates that existential dread of like, man, what am I working on even matter? And when am I going to know? Right? Like it's tricky for everyone. And I mean, I feel this way as a pre-product market fit founder. You feel this way as, someone that's got, tens of millions of dollars in revenue, right? I'm sure billion-dollar revenue company founders feel this way, public company founders feel this way. Like everyone's got the existential dread, at least part of the time, I would say.
I will say that's why we wanted to bring podcasts back. So speaking to the audience for a brief moment, a lot of these things are interesting questions. We're excited to share those conversations with all of you again. And if you have your own thoughts about things that we're definitely wrong about, that you disagree with, those we definitely want to hear. So excited to bring this thing back. It's good to have y'all back on again.
Yeah, thank you, Casey.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Casey.
All right, everybody. That's it for this first episode of our third season of Unsolicited Feedback. We hope you enjoyed it. What a critical and interesting topic that I have a feeling we're going to be talking about more in upcoming episodes. But if you have any questions for us, reach out to us. We hope to be doing the second episode soon. And in the meantime, once again, check out the product strategy course by Fareed and Casey to help you think through some of these concepts, as well as our new AI strategy course created with the former chief product officer of Tinder, Ravi Mehta. We'll drop those links in the show notes. And also check out Reforge's new product, Insight Analytics, that helps you aggregate the chaotic, qualitative information that you are collecting about your customers from sales, success, support, user research, marketing, and the product teams into one place, uses AI to help you analyze it, and then puts it at the fingertips of your builders in the tools that they're already working in, like Jira, Linear, Notion, Google Docs, and a lot more. We'll drop all these links once again into the show notes. Other than that, we hope you enjoyed the episode. Have a good one.